be alright.
Welcome everyone to Marvel Hub. This is DK Dynamite, and today we're going to be talking about Thor: Love and Thunder and how that movie fits in chronologically with the MCU timeline and how James Gunn can then respond to the story from Thor 4 with his Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So thanks to the Marvel Studios Spoilers Reddit, it came to my attention that James Gunn confirmed Thor 4 will be taking place before Guardians 3. Now, it doesn't confirm that Thor is going to be appearing in Guardians 3, but obviously the end of Avengers Endgame really implied that Thor's next journey in the MCU will be with the Guardians. But we don't know as to whether or not Taika Waititi or James Gunn were on board with that. We don't know if whether or not James Gunn was fired from Marvel altogether as they were writing that plot point for Avengers Endgame. We just don't know. You know, they could have already wrote that. You could have agreed with it. You could have wanted that. We just know those details right now. But when it comes to Taika Waititi, apparently he wasn't too excited about how they treated Thor in Infinity War and Endgame. It's almost like what they essentially set up in Ragnarok was almost undone within Infinity War and Endgame. Because first of all, you have him lose an eye and his hammer in Thor Ragnarok, and then for him to learn that he's more than just a hammer. The power's inside of him. He can have one eye and still be the god of thunder, right? Then Infinity War literally gives him a new eye straight away, completely fixes that plot point of him having one eye, and allows him to make a new weapon, so Stormbreaker instead of Mjolnir. So it almost spits on Ragnarok a little bit, still further develops his character into this new revitalized version of Thor that everybody really praises now, a lot more than they originally did. Still does that, but at the same time, kind of takes Taika Waititi's work and kind of dismisses a little bit of it. Just kind of. Not too much, but I'm sure people out there do agree with that to an extent. I would say I absolutely love Stormbreaker. I really do love what they did with Thor in Infinity War and Endgame. But I do understand, from Taika's point of view, how they kind of took something that he wrote and established and kind of dismissed it. And now it's kind of up to him to then deal with that with his Thor sequel, Love and Thunder. So I'm not sure how they're going to handle that. But I do have some notes written down as to what direction they could take Thor, Love, and Thunder in. So we're definitely going to have Thor lose weight. That's definitely going to happen. I just think the point of him being a little chubby in Endgame was to kind of convey a bigger message. That no matter what you look like, no matter how deep of a hole you're in, no matter how depressed you are, you can still get to the top. You could still, clutch your way back to victory, and you could still make a comeback in a way from a very dark time. And you could still, prove victory over someone else who may have every advantage over you. So I think that was really the big message with Thor. So it was a positive message, I would say the least about that when it comes to his treatment in Avengers Endgame. It was comedic, sure, but he still proved the point that he was still worthy despite what he looked like, despite the decisions he made that made him look that way. He was still worthy of Mjolnir's old hammer. So I think it was a cool plot point overall. Didn't take away too much from the story. Maybe his fighting skills were a little nerfed during the final battle because of his weight, but overall they did a good job, utilizing Thor in Infinity War and Endgame, since the Russo brothers never got to handle him in obviously Captain America Winter Soldier or Captain America Civil War, the other two Marvel movies they did. It was their first time playing with Thor, and I think they did a good job. And obviously James Gunn produced parts of Avengers 3 and 4, and I believe Taika Waititi was on set most of the time, so I'm sure they were still involved with somewhat of the Thor and cosmic storylines they were going on, which obviously the Russo brothers hadn't covered before in their previous Marvel movies, so I'm sure there was influence from them. They weren't completely disappointed by their treatment, but it was obviously the Russo brothers' films, so they treated it the way that they felt the film should be treated as well. So in terms of that, he'll lose the weight, no doubt about that. But in terms of Jane Foster becoming worthy, obviously the comic run is a bit sad. The comic kind of deals with Thor losing his worthiness of Mjolnir, and then Jane Foster having breast cancer, and somehow then becomes worthy of Mjolnir, and every time she uses Mjolnir, she gets even more sick, and eventually she passes away, and then another comic later on down the line, I don't know how many years after that one, they bring her back to life. I believe Odin brings her back to life somehow, and everything's fine. It's a bit of a weird comic, but the thing about that is that they already dealt with Thor not being worthy in the first Thor movie. So I'm not sure if they're going to replicate that story exactly from the comics and put it on the big screen with Love and Thunder. They might just rewrite it a little bit from Civil War, where you have the foundation of what the story means, but they completely rewrite it exclusively for the MCU. So it makes sense with the current timeline of events, and it makes sense with the previous continuity of Thor movies. I'm assuming that's what they'll do. I'm not sure how Jane could become worthy, but they could even do something along the lines of saying, well, because she had the ether inside of her, there's some long-term effects where now she's getting cancer or this sickness, and somehow her becoming worthy and holding Mjolnir allows her to treat that illness, but not permanently, just temporarily, as she uses the hammer or her powers with the power of Thor, just like Cap had in Avengers Endgame. But it doesn't last forever. She has to then, put a rest to those powers every once in a while, but then she'll be sick. So they could write something unique like that about how Jane gets sick, if that's the plot point they're going for with why she has to become worthy. It's also unknown as to whether or not this Jane Foster is from our Earth, our universe, or if it's from an alternate Earth. Not sure how they're going to do that, because obviously Doctor Strange 2 takes place before Thor, Love and Thunder, so they can easily introduce some multiverse stuff with this Thor movie as well. I'm not sure how they can handle that. They could even have Eitri the dwarf from Infinity War make a new hammer for some apparent reason, and then it somehow finds Jane. I'm not sure how they can handle that. A lot of different possibilities with how they can handle Jane being worthy, but obviously there's a little bit of explaining to do with how they broke up off screen as confirmed in Ragnarok, and then she's going to come back and have this major role, which is going to be a pretty big role going forward as the female Thor. So there are people out there who are concerned about Chris Hemsworth's involvement with the MCU now. Is Natalie Portman's Jane Foster replacing our actual Thor going forward in the MCU? I don't think that's the case. I've heard rumors that Chris Hemsworth signed the big picture deal after Endgame. He's definitely on board for more Thor. And I think with the revitalized version of his character, thanks to Taika Waititi, I think now Chris Hemsworth is down to keep playing Thor for as long as possible until he sees it as a good time to leave. So I think when it comes to Thor, as I said before, even though realistically he can't be in every Marvel movie, the character could live to be thousands of years old. So that means the cameos are inevitable for future Marvel movies to come, future Avengers projects, future cosmic projects, Guardian spin-offs, all types of stuff. So Thor could appear anywhere. He's just that great of a character overall. But with the age and how his actual life works as a god, he could be around for a very long time if Chris Hemsworth wants to stay on board. But I just think they are adding Jane Foster as the female Thor, not just to pay homage to the comic that obviously exists, but also to incorporate more inclusion for the MCU. As we all know, with Eternals having LGBTQ cast, Valkyrie being LGBTQ in Thor, Love and Thunder, they're going to put in all that, inclusion, despite what you guys think about it. It's going to happen. But I don't think it's going to sideline the main Thor. I just don't think that's the right move for them. They know it would cause backlash. Nobody's going to accept that, especially since Jane Foster hasn't actually appeared since Thor the Dark World, the second movie in 2013. She obviously had a cameo in Endgame, but it was actually put together using unused footage from Thor the Dark World. So it's been a while. There's a lot of explaining to do. Are they going to date again? Is she still his love interest? What's going on with her? A lot to explain, which I think Taika Waititi will definitely do a good job explaining in his movie. Now, it was also confirmed by Tessa Thompson that Valkyrie, since she is now the king of Asgard, is going to be looking for her queen of Asgard. So obviously she's going to be bisexual or gay or however they want to describe it. So she'll be looking for a female to be her queen. So I'm not sure if this Jane Foster's from a different Earth and then she's bisexual and ends up having a thing with Valkyrie. I don't think that's the case, because I think we are getting the real Jane Foster that we all remember and left behind in Thor 2. Pretty sure that's what's happening. So if that's the case, Valkyrie's going to meet a new woman and then have her by her side. It's also interesting to point out that in the original comic, Jane Foster did become a Valkyrie for a short amount of time after meeting the original Valkyrie. So they could do a lot of things with Jane Foster here in this movie. I'm really looking forward to it. And as I said before, in my big live stream, breaking down and reacting to Phase 4 from Marvel, I'm like, the biggest surprises from the reveal at SDCC was the fact that Jane Foster is back, Natalie Portman repaired her relationship with Marvel, and the fact that we're getting Fantastic Four and Blade movies in Phase 5. Absolutely insane to hear that about the future of the MCU. So in terms of James Gunn and Guardians 3, again, obviously Endgame heavily implied that Thor's joining the Guardians, but since Thor 4 is taking place before Guardians 3, they could cover this in so many ways. They could have the Guardians drop off Thor in the beginning and say, yeah, we'll come back and get you, whenever, but Thor obviously has the Stormbreaker weapon, which allows him to use the Bifrost and go anywhere anyway, so he doesn't need a ride from Quill and his ship. So, not sure how they handle that, but they could also cover it in the way where Thor has a bit of dialogue at the beginning, similar to the beginning of Ragnarok, where he describes, how he left Earth and looking for the Infinity Stones. They could do something like that, where Thor's like, well, I was with the Guardians for a couple months, lost some weight, fought some bad guys, had my fun, now I'm back on my own again, trying to find my way. They could do that too. There's so many ways they could handle the Guardians, or they could not even acknowledge them at all. Who knows what they're actually going to do, and just have them, like, as a cameo at the end of the movie. They pick Thor back up, and then Guardians 3 happens. There's so many things they could do, but once again, it's unknown as to whether or not James Gunn had any influence on the ending of Avengers Endgame, where Thor leaves with the Guardians. I wonder if he's pissed about that, he doesn't want that. I wonder if he planned that with Kevin Feige and the producers and the McFeelys. I wonder if he actually did that. I really want to know that. But in terms of Guardians 3, as I was saying, I do believe James Gunn could write this in a very specific way. James Gunn could write Guardians 3 in a way where you have Adam Warlock or Nova introduced, and he has Thor in the plot helping the Guardians, because there has to be somebody to match the power levels of people like Nova and Adam Warlock. It would make a lot of sense. But if they find another way to write the story of Guardians 3 in a better way, where it's really centered around Rocket and Gamora specifically, as he previously reported, then I don't see how Thor could really fit in there, if this movie's also kind of a goodbye to the core Guardians team we all know and love. We've had this core Guardians team in 4 films now, Guardians 1 and 2, Avengers 3 and 4, so then Guardians 3 is kind of a send-off to this original crew, starting a new team of Guardians for potential spin-offs in the future, or potential Volume 4. Not sure how they're going to handle that, but they could also do a Beta Ray Bill storyline. They could also do something where in Thor Love and Thunder, something is drastically set up that is perfectly tied into the plot of Guardians 3. So there's a lot going on here. I'm sure there will be some rewrites to the script when it comes to Volume 3 based on what Taika Waititi does with Thor 4. Obviously, James Gunn is currently finishing the Suicide Squad, the quote-unquote reboot or sequel, however you want to describe that movie. I'm not sure exactly what it is anymore. But once he's done with that, he'll hop back on board with Marvel, figure out how to tie in Guardians 3 with everything that's going on after Endgame and Thor 4, and they'll make it all work. But I'm really looking forward to the next cosmic adventures of the MCU. Obviously, we have Eternals coming out. That might tie into some future, team-up projects in Phase 5. We'll just have to wait and see. But let me know what you think of all this down below in the comment section. This has been DK Dynamite. Check all links down below in the description, and turn notifications on to stay up to date with the latest and greatest Marvel news and information. And peace out, everyone.